My name is Patricia Marlowe, and I often say that my life truly began on the day it was supposed to change forever. But that feels too simple, too clean for what actually happened. The real beginning of my story was not my wedding day itself. It was the morning I realized that love can open a door, and fear can slam it shut. And in my case, the door that slammed shut was my own bedroom door, locked by the two people who were supposed to protect me, my parents. I grew up on the quiet outskirts of Willow Springs, a small American town wrapped in the smell of pine trees and old history. Our house stood at the end of a narrow street that led straight into a patch of woods. It was a two-story wooden home built decades before I was born, with peeling white paint and a slanted porch that creaked like it had secrets of its own. Inside, the walls were thin enough that whispers slipped under the doors like drafts. Every argument echoed. Every sigh followed me. Sometimes I felt like even my thoughts were too loud for that house. My parents, Patrick and Lorraine, were not the kind of people you'd recognize in a crowd. They blended into the background, plain clothes, plain voices, plain expectations. And yet, their presence filled every corner of that house so completely that I often felt there was no space left for me. Their version of love was tight and suffocating, a kind of affection that wrapped around my life, so hard it cut off the air. They controlled everything. My clothes, my hairstyle, my bedtime even when I was 20. They decided where I worked, a tiny bookstore on Main Street where I earned $1,200 a month, but saw barely $50 of it because they insisted I help the household. They said they needed it for bills, but somehow the bills were never paid early, and somehow my father always had enough for beer, and my mother had enough for her little online shopping habits. I was 24 and felt like I was still 14. Then came Adrien Cole. If my life had a before and after, Adrien was the line that divided them. I met him during a charity event in Newport Hill, a nearby city, where I volunteered on weekends. The library there was hosting a fundraiser for a local homeless shelter, and I was assigned to the used books booth. He approached with a curious smile, picked up 3 novels he clearly didn't plan on reading, and asked me questions. Not the shallow kind, but the kind that made me feel seen. When he laughed, it wasn't loud or showy. It was warm, like a quiet approval I'd never felt before. He was from Harborview, a bustling city by the water, a place full of glass buildings and opportunity. People in Willow Springs whispered that he was rich, something about real estate investments, the kind of work that sounded complicated and important. Someone once told me he was worth over $5 million, but to me, his steady presence was worth more than any number on paper. He listened to every word I said like it mattered, like I mattered. Our coffee chats turned into long drives through the countryside, and those drives turned into dinners in small restaurants overlooking the river. Soon we started planning things together, little things at first like weekend trips, and then bigger things like a shared future. His confidence made me brave. His gentleness made me hope. And one evening, on a quiet pier in Newport Hill, he got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. I said yes before he could finish the question. I loved him. I loved the way he looked at me like I was a whole universe. I loved the way he made me believe I could do more than just survive. I loved the freedom of imagining a life beyond Willow Springs, beyond my parents' house, beyond the walls that had caged me since childhood. The diamond ring he slipped onto my finger sparkled under the sunset, but the shine I felt inside my chest was brighter. My parents' reaction, however, was cold enough to freeze anything warm inside my heart. "You can't marry him, Patricia," my mother said the night I told them. Her voice was sharp and breathless, like I had announced something terrible. "Who will take care of us? Who will clean this house? Who will cook?" My father didn't bother, hiding his anger. He slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. "We raised you," he said. "You owe us. You're not going anywhere." They spoke about duty as if it were a chain tied around my ankle. They spoke about obligation as if it were love. I tried to reason with them. I told them I could still visit. I told them I'd still help. But they didn't want help. They wanted control. Not a daughter, but a servant. Adrien tried to reach out to them. He came to our house, wearing his best suit, holding a basket of gifts, determined to show them respect. My father answered the door and shut it almost immediately, leaving Adrien standing on the porch with kindness in his hands and anger in his eyes. That was the moment he realized what I had always lived with. My parents believed I belonged to them. Despite everything, we set a date. A small church in Brighton Falls, right by the coast, accepted our booking. Adrien paid $3,000 for the venue and $2,500 for a beautiful stone hall where we would celebrate afterward. He showed me a listing for a house in Silverbrook, a peaceful American suburb with gardens and friendly neighbors. The house had a blue door, a big kitchen, and a backyard where he said we could plant roses, red ones for love, white ones for peace. I felt safe imagining that garden. The night before the wedding, I laid my dress across my bed. I ran my fingers along the soft fabric and tried to imagine walking down the aisle toward the man who had given me a life to dream about. I didn't know that my parents were making their own plans. The next morning, my wedding day, I woke up early, excited, ready. The sun outside my window looked brighter than usual, like it was celebrating with me. But when my mother called me downstairs for breakfast, her smile felt wrong. Too tight, too sweet, like sugar hiding something bitter. After breakfast, she asked me to wait in my room so she could help me get ready. I walked upstairs with my heart full of hope. The moment I stepped into my room, the door slammed shut behind me. Then came the sound that changed everything. Click, the lock. On the outside. And that was how my wedding morning began, with a locked door, a stolen future, and the first crack in the only cage I had ever known. The morning of my wedding day had felt like the beginning of a fairy tale, one I had waited my entire life to enter. I woke with excitement buzzing under my skin, the kind of excitement that makes you feel weightless, as if the world is holding its breath for you. My bedroom was filled with soft golden light that slipped through the thin white curtains, dust dancing in the air like tiny stars. My dress hung from the closet door, wrapped in a smooth garment bag that looked too elegant for my small, cracked-walled room. I stared at it for a moment, imagining myself wearing it, the fabric floating behind me as I walked toward Adrien. My mother's voice came drifting up the stairs. "Patricia, breakfast." Her tone was unusually sweet, almost cheerful. I should have recognized the danger in that sweetness. With my mother, sweetness always came with a sharp edge hidden somewhere behind it. But I wasn't thinking about danger. I was thinking about love, about a new life, about a future that finally felt like mine. I slipped out of bed, brushed my hair quickly, and hurried downstairs. The smell of toast and coffee filled the kitchen, and for a moment I thought maybe my parents had gotten used to the idea of my marriage. Maybe they had accepted it. My father sat hunched over his coffee cup, staring into it as though it held answers to questions he didn't want to ask out loud. The lines on his forehead were deep, his jaw tight. My mother placed a plate in front of me. Eggs, toast, and a few slices of fruit. I almost smiled at the effort. "Eat something," she said, her voice soft and syrupy. "You don't want to faint at the ceremony." I nodded and took a bite. The food tasted fine, but something in the air felt wrong. Heavy, shifting, like a storm approaching. My father didn't say a word. He didn't even look at me. Instead, he kept flexing his fingers, tightening and loosening them around his mug. After breakfast, my mother turned to me and smiled so wide her cheeks looked painful. "Go to your room, sweetheart. I'll help you with your dress in a minute." I felt warmth spread through my chest. For the first time in months, she sounded like a real mother again. I stood, carried my plate to the sink, and walked up the stairs, humming softly to myself. Today was supposed to be beautiful. Today was supposed to be the day I walked out of that house, out of my old life, and into a new one. But the moment I stepped into my room, everything changed. The door slammed behind me, louder than anything else in that quiet hallway. Before I could turn around, I heard the sound that would haunt me for days. Click, the lock. From the outside, my breath paused in my chest. I reached for the doorknob and twisted it. It didn't move. I tried again, harder, my heartbeat speeding until it echoed in my ears. The doorknob rattled uselessly. "Mom," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Dad? The door is stuck." Silence. Then footsteps. Then my father's voice, flat and cold. "You're not going." I felt the world tilt under my feet. "What do you mean I'm not going? Today is my wedding day. I have to get to the church. Adrien's waiting for me." My mother's voice came through the door, sharp and wild. "You can't get married. You'll leave us after the wedding. You think you can walk out and start a new life without us?
No.
You stay here with us. You owe us. You will not leave." Panic crashed over me like a wave. I balled my fists and pounded on the door. "Please. You can't do this. I love him. He loves me. I'm supposed to be there." My voice cracked. "Please." But they didn't care. My parents had built their own version of the future, one where I was trapped in this house until they were both old and gray, and even after that, if they could manage it. "You are our daughter," my mother shouted. "You belong in this house." The hours that followed stretched like weeks. I screamed until my throat burned. I hit the door until my hands were bruised. I begged, I cried, I pleaded, but nothing softened them. My phone had been taken the night before. My mother said it was so I could rest without distractions. Now I knew the truth. They had planned everything. They didn't want me calling Adrien. They didn't want anyone knowing what they were going to do. From my window, I watched the sun climb into the sky. Noon passed. The hour of my ceremony approached, and then slipped away. I imagined the church in Brighton Falls, decorated with white flowers and soft music. Adrien in his navy blue suit. Guests whispering. The priest checking his watch. And me absent. A hollow ache spread through my chest. I curled up on the floor, trembling, my wedding dress only a few feet away, untouched. Adrien had chosen it with me, smiling at how the soft ivory fabric made my eyes look brighter. He had paid $600 for the cake, $1,200 for the band. He had booked a beautiful hall, bought rings, planned our life, everything. And all of it was slipping away because of the people who claimed to love me. The sun began to set, turning my small bedroom a deep orange. My wedding day, the day I had dreamed about for years, was ending. I lay on the floor, my tears drying on my skin, and felt myself breaking in ways I didn't know a heart could break. They kept me locked in that room for a full week. 3 times a day, my mother brought a plate of food and slipped it inside without meeting my eyes. My father's footsteps echoed outside my door like a guard patrolling a prison cell. When I cried, they dismissed me. "Stop being dramatic," my mother said. "You'll thank us one day," my father insisted. "You would have made a mistake." But the truth was clear. I wasn't their daughter.
Not to them.
I was their worker, their servant, the one who cleaned the house, cooked their meals, managed their errands, washed their clothes. Losing me meant losing their convenience. And so, they stole my wedding. They stole my voice. They stole my freedom. In that locked room, I whispered to myself, "It's over. Adrien will think I abandoned him. He'll never forgive me. He'll move on." I believed everything was ruined. But I was wrong, so very wrong. My story was only just beginning. I learned later that while I spent 7 endless days trapped in that small room, Adrien was living through his own kind of nightmare. And though I couldn't see him, couldn't hear him, couldn't even imagine what he was going through, his world was unraveling just as quickly as mine. The difference was that he fought his way through the darkness, while I was locked behind a door I couldn't escape. On the day I never showed up at the church in Brighton Falls, Adrien stood waiting for me inside the softly lit sanctuary with a restless desperation growing inside him. The stained glass windows cast colorful patterns on the floor, but to him the whole place felt gray, empty, wrong. He checked his watch again and again. 10 minutes passed, then 30, then an hour. He walked outside, pacing the stone steps, staring up the road for any sign of me. Guests whispered among themselves. The musicians shifted uncomfortably. Even the priest kept glancing at Adrien, offering polite but worried smiles. But Adrien knew me. He knew I would never miss my own wedding, not without calling him, not without a reason so serious it would terrify both of us. He pulled out his phone and dialed my number. straight to voicemail. He tried again.
And again.
And again. My silence became a weight on his chest. He drove to the small hotel in Brighton Falls where I was supposed to get ready, praying I had simply been delayed. The manager recognized my name immediately. Adrien had reserved the bridal suite himself. But the woman behind the counter frowned apologetically. She never checked in, she told him. Those words made something inside him freeze. He left the hotel and got into his car, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. There was only one explanation he could think of, one he prayed was wrong but feared was true. My parents. He drove straight to Willow Springs, his mind racing, every streetlight blurring past him. When he pulled into the driveway of my parents' house, he didn't bother hiding his fear. He jumped out of the car and sprinted to the front door, pounding his fist against it. My father opened the door just a crack, showing barely half his face. His expression was calm, too calm, as if he'd rehearsed the moment. She changed her mind, he said flatly. She's not going to marry you. Leave. Adrien felt something snap inside him. Where's she? He demanded. She doesn't want to see you, my father repeated. Go. Before Adrien could say anything else, the door slammed shut, the sound echoing across the quiet yard like a warning. He stood there, staring at the old wooden door, his heart pounding. He wasn't just upset, he was terrified. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. He had never seen fear as clearly as he saw it then, sinking into his bones. He turned away from the house, walked back to his car, and sat in the driver's seat with his hands shaking. He knew he had two options, believe the lie or fight for me. He chose to fight. Adrien drove straight to the Willow Springs Police Department, the cold air burning in his lungs as he walked through the doors. He approached the front desk with a determination that surprised even him. My name is Adrien Cole, he told the officer on duty, Detective Mariah Green. My fiancée, Patricia Marlowe, has disappeared. Her parents say she changed her mind, but I don't believe that. She loves me. They always hated me. They didn't want her to leave their house. Detective Green was tall, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She asked him questions, quick and precise. How long has she been missing? Since this morning, he said. Then he corrected himself.
No.
It's been hours. But something is wrong. I can feel it. Her parents are lying. At first, the officer treated it like a simple case of cold feet. Adults run away. Adults change their minds. But Adrien didn't back down. He showed them my texts, the wedding invitations, the receipt for the $3,000 venue deposit, and the $2,500 reception hall. He showed them the $600 cake order and the £4,000 honeymoon booking he had made for our trip through Parisport and Westminster Bay in Europe. Does this look like a woman who changed her mind? He asked, his voice breaking. We planned every detail together. Her parents always treated her like a servant. They said she owed them her life. They didn't want her to marry me, because then she would finally be free. Detective Green stared at the documents, her expression shifting from polite skepticism to something far more serious. She could see the truth forming between the lines. If what you're saying is true, she said quietly, this may be more than a misunderstanding. She opened an official investigation. Within the hour, she and two officers, Officer Daniel Rowe and Officer Lila Henson, were in a patrol car heading to my parents' home. Adrien insisted on driving behind them. He refused to stay behind. He refused to sit still while I might be trapped somewhere. By the time they arrived, I had been locked in my room for 7 long, suffocating days. My hair was knotted. My eyes were swollen from crying. My hands hurt from pounding the door so many times. I had stopped calling out hours earlier because my voice felt shredded. I lay curled up on my bed, staring at the ceiling, empty and numb. Then I heard it. The crunch of tires on gravel. Car doors opening. Boots stepping onto the porch. Then a loud, firm knock. This is the police, a woman shouted. Open the door. I bolted upright. I thought I was dreaming. I thought I had finally lost my mind from the loneliness. But then I heard my father's voice downstairs, tense, defensive. We don't need police here, he said. Everything is fine. Our daughter just decided to stay with us. Detective Green wasn't fooled for a second. "Sir, we have a report that your daughter may be held here against her will. We need to see her and speak to her alone." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then footsteps on the stairs. A moment later, a knock on my bedroom door. "Patricia," a woman called. "This is Detective Mariah Green with the Willow Springs Police Department. Are you in there?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat closed. Tears filled my eyes. Then I threw myself at the door and shouted with every ounce of strength I had left, "Yes, I'm here. Please help me." Everything changed in that single second. My life shifted. My future opened. The world outside my locked door had finally come for me. And Adrien, my Adrien, was standing right behind them. When the police broke the lock on my bedroom door, the sound echoed like thunder inside my chest. The metal latch snapped. The door swung open with a heavy groan, and light, real, warm, golden light, poured into the room for the first time in a week. I blinked at it, stunned and trembling. Then I saw them. 3 officers standing in the doorway, and behind them, half hidden in the shadow of the hallway, stood Adrien. His hair was disheveled, his face pale, and his eyes carried 7 days of worry. But the moment he saw me, something in his expression softened. He breathed out my name like a prayer he had been repeating endlessly. "Patricia?" I moved on instinct, stumbling forward as my legs shook beneath me. He caught me before I fell, wrapping his arms around me with a tenderness so fierce it nearly undid me. I could feel his heart pounding wildly beneath my cheek. It matched the rhythm of my own. Fear, relief, love, all tangled together. "I thought I lost you," he whispered, his voice breaking on the last word. "You didn't," I managed to say. "They locked me in here. I tried to get out. I tried." My voice cracked. All the days of silence twisted into that one trembling confession. Detective Mariah Green stepped inside, her sharp eyes scanning the room. She looked at the barred window, at the scratches on the inside of the door, at my bruised hands, at the untouched wedding dress still hanging limply in the corner. Her jaw tightened. "Ms. Marlowe," she said gently, turning to me, "did your parents keep you in this room against your will?" I swallowed, but there was no hesitation left in me. The truth rose up like a wave.
Yes.
They said I couldn't get married. They told me I had to stay and take care of them. They took my phone. They locked me in on my wedding day. That was all she needed. The officers moved quickly, their boots thudding down the stairs like a judgment hammering through the air. I could hear my parents shouting before they even reached the living room. My mother's shrill voice rose in furious disbelief. My father yelled that they were only protecting me, that I owed them everything. Their excuses grew louder, more desperate, but the officers weren't listening. Adrien stayed beside me, steady as a pillar. He draped his jacket over my shoulders and held my hand while we walked out of that suffocating house. The air outside was cool, crisp, and open, more open than anything I had felt in years. The sky stretched above Willow Springs like a freedom I had never allowed myself to imagine. For the first time, I breathed deeply. In the days that followed, everything happened quickly and slowly at the same time. There were police interviews, legal paperwork, and hearings at the courthouse in Ridgemont, another American town not far from ours. I had to repeat my story more times than I could count, each retelling pulling something raw from my chest. My parents sat across the courtroom during the hearings, staring at me with a mixture of anger and betrayal, as if I had trapped them, not the other way around. They were found guilty of unlawful imprisonment, coercion, and abuse. Watching them being led away in handcuffs should have felt like justice, and it did. But underneath that justice was a quiet sadness. They were still my parents, the people who raised me, even if they raised me wrong. I felt grief for what could have been, for the family I wished I'd had. But grief is not the same as guilt, and I refused to let it pull me back into the prison they had built around my life. Adrien rented a small but adorable house in Maple Ridge, a calm American town with wide streets and kind neighbors. The house had a bright yellow front door that looked like sunshine even on cloudy days. Inside, We had a soft gray couch that he bought for $650 and a kitchen large enough for us to move around each other without bumping shoulders. He paid the $1,800 monthly rent without hesitation, telling me that my comfort mattered more than any number. He never once pressured me about the wedding. Not once. One evening, as we stood in the kitchen preparing dinner, me chopping vegetables, Adrien stirring a pot of soup, he set the spoon down and turned to face me. His eyes searched mine not with fear, but with quiet certainty. "Patricia," he said, taking my hands gently, "we can still get married. But not because of everything that happened.
Not to fix anything.
Not out of fear or guilt. Only if you still want to. You're free now.
Completely free.
Your choice matters." There are moments in life when words don't feel big enough to carry your feelings. This was one of them. I saw him. Not just the man who saved me, but the man who loved me enough to let me choose. I thought about the thousands of dollars he had spent searching for me, the sleepless nights, the fear he must have lived with, the strength it took to never give up. "I still want to," I said softly. "But I want to walk into that future on my own feet this time. No locked doors. No cages. No fear." He smiled in a way that made my heart warm. We planned a small ceremony at the courthouse in Lakeside Harbor, a peaceful city by the water. No aisle, no orchestra, no guests, just simplicity and truth. Detective Green agreed to be our witness, standing beside us like a guardian angel in a police uniform. When the judge asked if I took Adrien to be my husband, a flood of memories washed over me. The locked room, the stolen wedding day, the fear that swallowed me whole. But then came the memories of him standing at the church, searching for me, fighting for me, finding me. "I do," I said, the words firm, certain, and full of life. We stepped outside afterward, husband and wife, into the cool breeze rolling off the lake. I felt something in me click into place, like a door opening instead of closing. We moved again a few months later, this time into a house we purchased together in Cedeford, another quiet American town with tree-lined streets. We paid $420,000 for it, both our names written on the paperwork. The house had a green lawn that Adrien mowed on weekends and a wide porch where I drank coffee in the mornings. Our bedroom door was painted blue, and it never locked. Now, when I tell the story, people ask if I regret any part of it. The pain, the fear, the silence, the betrayal. Sometimes I wish things had been easier. I wish my parents had known how to love without breaking me. I wish my first wedding day had been filled with music instead of tears. But in another way, I am grateful. Because this is not a story about imprisonment. It's a story about freedom. Not a story about pain. It's a story about strength. Not a story about being lost, but about being found. Every morning, when I wake up next to the man who never stopped searching for me, I whisper a thank you to myself for surviving and to fate for turning the worst moment of my life into the doorway that led me to the best one.